Good afternoon, everyone, and or good morning, depending on where you are. Welcome to our webinar today. The topic is Adapting AI Enhanced ERP, a nonprofit roadmap to success. So first, I wanted to just introduce our guest. I'm super excited to welcome Kevin Fryatt, Executive Vice President and CFO of Opportunity Finance Network. Kevin spent his career in nonprofit space and have served on a number of boards and chaired the finance committee as well. So we're very appreciative that Kevin, you're giving us your time and sharing your experience.
Yeah,
And just a really quick introduction for myself. I'm Bulin Tran. I'm Senior VP of Financial Solutions. I've spent 25 years supporting nonprofits, with their back office accounting operation, leveraging financial solutions. And one of which we're going to be talking about today is Sage Intacct. And just as FYI, both Kevin and I are located in the DC area. Um, so today we're going to go through and talk about a number of areas pertaining to your experience, Kevin, with technology and transitions. So before we get started, we have a couple of housekeeping items that we need to go over. In terms of housekeeping, if you have any questions, please submit your questions in the question box on your control panel, and we will answer them, at the end of the presentation, or if we see them coming in, we can also address them along the way as well. Today's recording and slide will be emailed to you following the webinar. The webinar is CPE accredited. Your participation today may earn you 1 CPE credit. To receive a CPE credit, actively respond to polling questions 3 out of the 4. Complete a survey that will pop up at the end of the webinar. Stay on for the duration of the webinar. And if you have any technical issues, you can let us know via the Q&A or just email. There's an email address that's provided right there. And really quick, we just want to, just talk a little bit about who is JMT. JMT was founded in 1991 to help nonprofits achieve their mission. We work exclusively with nonprofit organizations. JMT is headquartered in Nashville, Tennessee. We serve over 2,000 nonprofits across the U.S., a few in Canada, supporting nonprofits' back office accounting operations with financial systems and accounting services. And in terms of the service that we provide, we are finance. We support clients with in the finance operational side. And so we implement and support ERP solutions, 2 of which include Sage Intacct and MIP. We implement and support budget management solution. We do provide outsourced accounting services. We perform accounting operation assessment work, assist with system integrations between our ERP and other systems, as well as grant management support. And then this is a CPE accredited presentation, so I want to just quickly go over some of the learning objectives. Today we're going to be covering understand the typical barriers to successful digital adoption and how to proactively address them. Learn actionable strategies for planning, implementing, and optimizing AI-powered ERP tools while navigating organizational change. And then talk a little bit about the ERP solutions like Sage Intacct, how you can drive efficiencies, enhance visibility, and support better decision-making for nonprofit. All right, so I'm going to transition, and this is really very informal. And as I mentioned, Kevin, so we're so happy that you're joining us today. We do have a few questions, and so I'm gonna bring up some of these questions here. So let's start with some context. What were some of the biggest finance and operational pain points at OFN that led you to consider modernizing ERP system?
Yep. No, I'm happy to be here, Boo, and thanks for the invitation. So yeah, maybe just I guess context around OFN or the Opportunity Finance Network, which I think help sort of guide the discussion around the journey that we've been on. But so we're a 40-year-old organization, membership organization that has a number of different elements to our operation. We're an investment fund. We're a policy shop, as well as an association, a member-based association. So we put a lot of resources over the years into serving our membership, and I think and had not put a lot of resources into technology and broader operations. And with new leadership a couple of years ago, a lot of that has changed. I joined the organization about a year and 3 months ago, so about 15 months in a chief operations role, which had technology, data, and other things under my purview. And then roughly 4 months in, was asked to be our interim CFO. So I'm relatively new to the organization, but I think kind of the way that I approach things is from an efficiency, technology, and data-oriented lens, and I think that has helped shape our perspective on how we want to build for the future. Um, and I think like some of the pain points that we were facing and are sort of working through is like our reality was like we had a sort of legacy ERP system in place. We did not have a system for AP or for expense management or budgeting, FP&A, any of that. So a lot of that was manual. So a lot of manual process. And what we wanted to achieve is really like we have growth aspirations, but we wanted to, especially in my finance shop, I wanted to be able to grow with the organization, but not necessarily grow headcount. Um, so automation, integration, wanting more timely and deeper insights into our data, and an organization that has affiliates, having a system that can support multiple affiliates and all the intercompany activity that happens between those. That was some of what informed kind of the journey that we've been on over the last 15 months or so.
That sounds great. And it sounds like that journey still continues. I mean, this is something that takes time to put in, right?
It's a journey that will never end, is how I sort of refer to it with my staff. This is
Yes.
technology implementation, process
Yes.
reengineering. This is not a one-time thing, and
Yeah.
it's more of a mindset than a physical journey, if you would. This is like
Yeah.
how I
Yeah.
encourage our staff to think about their work.
Yeah.
Is how do we create a more efficient environment with everything that we do?
Yeah. Well, your operations continue to evolve and the technology also continues to evolve. I mean, your solution, which is Sage Intacct, is, there's new functionality that are released on a quarterly basis. So, and your operations doesn't stay stale. I mean, there are things happening. So you want to, you know, like you said, you
You
want
don't
to
you don't
always
snap you don't snap your fingers and everything changes overnight either. So this
exactly,
is this is like we have to be
exactly.
very thoughtful about what we what we change when we change. I think that the absorption capacity, as I refer to it as, like from a change perspective with staff, like as humans, we have a certain limitation that allows us to ingest a certain amount of change in a given period of time. So like how do we ramp that up, but also kind of keep it in a manageable sort of volume?
Exactly, exactly. Now, Kevin, you and I met when before you came to OFN, you were at Wake Up, and that's where we met. It was when we started working together. Maybe you can take us back in time and talk a little bit about your ideas of exploring new ERP solutions like Sage Intacct, because you were already familiar with Sage when you arrived at OFN, and that journey really started in your previous with your previous organization at Wakeuf.
Yep, no, it was, I think, different context, but similar sort of reasons. So, like, I think in that context, I was bringing an outsourced finance function in-house when I joined the organization. So we didn't necessarily have a pre-existing staff in the function. We had a system. We were using QuickBooks, I think desktop at that point. This is a number of years ago. But the the desire was to bring the function in-house, build the processes that weren't necessarily there within an outsourced function, and start to build the kind of internal muscle. So I think some of the differences were that, yeah, like when I joined OFN, we had a finance function, very long-standing, long-tenured staff in the function. I didn't have that in my last role, so um, I think some of the change dynamics were different. The aspirations were roughly the same. Like we wanted real-time visibility. We wanted to get more dynamic in how we like our data architecture and get more dynamic on how we looked at the organization from a financial perspective, and really start to shift towards like forward looking planning and scenario planning and stuff like this, where I think with an outsourced function you have limited time just practically with what what you're paying for, and you're focused on getting a set of financial statements, making some decisions based on sort of a static output, and then waiting for 30 days until you receive the next the next output. So it was a little bit of a different dynamic, but I think the desire to find a solution like Sage Intacct was the same. And I think it, like, obviously the in 7 years down the road, the solution is looks a little bit different than it did 7 years ago with a lot of kind of enhancements. But I think the core fundamentals of what it provided were the same.
But one thing I wanted to note is that you did something that not everyone did, and it was very prudent of you to do this. And what you did at Wake Up, because you were on a QuickBooks solution, evaluating or considering, what system should wake up beyond, right? What solutions should you guys take on as you transition off of an outsource situation, and you actually engage in a in a consulting engagement, a small one, but you still did went through the exercise of doing some level of um, analysis, what's in the market, what should you be looking at. And I thought that was very, I thought that was a smart um, move, to take on, to do something like that, because you wanted to make sure you wanted to sort of dot the I's and cross the T's and just didn't,
Yeah, for a number of reasons, and I think um, some of that some of that is if someone wants to if someone down the road wants to ask the question of like, well, how did we land at solution X? Like there's some of that, but I think like underpinning that is really like I'm not a huge fan of implementing what I implemented at my last organization just for the sake of the fact that I know the system. And I've like I want to disassociate myself from the preferences that I've established over the years, because the needs of the organization change, the processes are different, the the analytics that we might be getting out from the data and the reporting needs that we need might be different. So um, yeah, I'm not a fan of walking into a new situation and just kind of cookie cutting the solution for the next thing. And I think this is the thing that I when we talked years ago, it was around like, okay, I know like as a value added reseller of a certain platform, there's a certain skill set there, but I want to get outside of the Sage Intacct world. And I think like we evaluated the all the kind of mid-market comparisons that were there, and it happened to be that Sage Intacct was the solution, and that's but I could tell folks why it was the solution and why it was the preferred solution, and knowing that you might be giving up functionality in one area and then you're gaining the same functionality in others. I think just knowing what you're stepping into, pros and cons, like what you're going to get, what you're not going to get, and actually walking in with eyes wide open helps set expectation. It helps you know how you need to build your team, because if it doesn't produce X, maybe you need the skill set in Y to compensate a system deficiency or what have you. So yeah, like same thing. And I think same thing at OFN as well, is like, let's understand the processes that we have and what solution will support it.
Great, great. Um, I wanted to be careful. I wanted to make sure we do address the polling questions. Um, oh, make sure that we have our polling questions up. All right, so our first polling question is, where is your organization currently in its ERP technology adoption journey? So these are the choices. We're still evaluating, or we're planning an implementation, or we're in the middle of an implementation, or we've already implemented a modern ERP, or it might, or the last option would be non-applicable. So if you could just take us a few seconds to answer that. The questions, I'm gonna close that, and we, it, let's see if we can see a result. Can we see results? All right, we're still evaluating options. That's good to see. This is this is very helpful, Kevin, because we're going to be talking about evaluating systems and change and adoption. So things that people very relevant if you're in that situation. So I do want to talk a little bit. You and I spoke even before we came on about challenges and barriers. What are some of the common barriers to adoptions you encounter at OFN, whether it be organizational, whether it's technical, or whether it's cultural? Were these barriers similar to some of the barriers you may have experienced with Wake Up? So, in generally speaking, what
Yeah,
are some of the barriers?
yeah, and I'll even go back beyond Wake, because I think beyond that experience, like I spent a lot of time internationally and
Hmm.
doing system work as well, with financial institutions around the world, and I think some of one of I'd say one of the most I'd say rewarding projects I ever worked on was a core banking system conversion, which included kind of an accounting system conversion as well. Um, this is going back probably 15 or so years, and I think one of the challenges that and I think this cascades across different kind of geographies, but that environment was one where I remember having staff, and I was a board member, but I also played a role as a technical consultant, or advisor in the process as well, and ended up playing project manager for this project. But one of the things that I heard considerably is like, we've tried this 3 different times and we've never been able to do it. Like, what makes you think that you're going to be the person who comes in and helps kind of convert us over to a new system? So like a lot of resistance from, not necessarily, it wasn't resistance in that it was like, well, what's wrong with what we're doing? Like, I've experienced that before as well. Like, well, we've been doing this first. Why do we need to change? Like, why? Like, we know these projects are hard. What makes us want to go into the trenches and get through an implementation to be in a better reality on the other side? But that's like, so I think like just like resistance to change, because change is hard, and it's like I would ask the same questions. Like, if you want to take me through the fire, show me why it's going to be worth it to get to the other side. So I think like for OFN, the organization had gone through a lot of change over the past number of years. Not this is like org change, not necessarily technological change. Changing CEOs with different visions and priorities and approaches, physical change, like we moved our office from Philly to DC. So just a lot of change. And I think when I first joined the organization, that was something that I heard a lot. And it's something that we've had to manage towards of like, okay, how much more change can we and how do we work through this to so if we are going to implement more change, like how do we get folks bought into going through the fire, but then kind of the vision of what it would look like on the other side? Because if you haven't experienced what the reality on the other side looks like, it's hard to kind of get bought into the vision of going through this process, which can be difficult to then ultimately get to the other side of the process. So I think like some of it's skepticism, and for folks like myself who've gone through this process, I'm like, of course, like I want to get to that other result because I know the efficiencies, I know the value, I know the timeliness of data and all the different insights that we can gather and it can help us make decisions and all of this. But really had to like answer that question, like why is it needed? Like why are we doing this? It's not just technology and honestly new process for the sake of technology and process. Like there's an ultimate reason why we're doing this. And and I think kind of creating an environment where folks know what that ultimate process or the ultimate destination looks like can help. And then ultimately, I think like folks ultimately just want to understand how's this going to impact me? Like, how's my life going to be easier? How is it going to get me the information that I don't have today and I want? Is this going to create more work for me? Is it going to make me like free up time? Like these are very tactical sort of realities that a lot of folks are interested in. And then the question is like, well, is this just technology taking over? And now, like, is my job safe? Like, just the practical
Yeah.
questions around that.
Yeah.
So having to kind of work through some of that, and I think the deeper folks get into it, the clearer I think it becomes. Where you start living that new reality, and you start to be like, oh, okay, like I spent my time doing X before, now I'm going to spend my time doing Y, and it might be different, but in many cases, it's higher value work that's being done. It's not just typing numbers into a spreadsheet or in a journal entry of something. It's like we can move to more like critical analysis and stuff like this. So yeah, that's a lot of, I think, some of the challenges that I've walked through. Like some of it's org culture related, some of it is human related, some of it's just historical and what experience that folks have gone through, and that informs how they view some of these projects and initiatives.
Yeah, you're absolutely right about you had mentioned about is a system going to take away my job? I think there is, for some folks that that might, be in the back of their mind, especially now there's so much AI out there. I mean, all the technology, it doesn't even have to be Sage. I mean, all of these other technologies, whether it's AP automation or is the budgeting and what, all these tools, they're everybody is, leveraging AI and, but, I think it's important to think that the technology, and you and I kind of talked about this before when we just a few minutes ago, these technology are enabler, meaning they're there to make your job or whatever functionality that is it's doing, is to make it easier. It's to bring compliance and to bring automation, right? And allowing the individual to do the more strategic work, as you mentioned, right? The higher level work. And I think that's And that's where you want your folks to be, is to be able to do that higher level work. And it sounds like OFN was actually going through some of these change already, not technology change, and it might have helped as you shift them on the technology side. They will already experience some change. Um, I wanted to ask you a question, and this is a question that I brought up, that I it's a topic that I've heard, and it has to do with change, actually. So, and we talked about technology being an enabler. And so, one of the things that a lot of these ERP solutions allow you to do is be able to produce great financial reports, where you're putting the report on dashboards. You can automatically email these reports out. And one of the comments I've heard from other CFOs is, well, Lynn, I don't even think that people are really looking at these reports. We're putting in the time, we're building these financial, we want to make sure that the numbers are relevant, but I don't know who's actually looking at them. And Kevin, I'm asking you, I wanted to get your opinion because you're a CFO, and wanted to get your take on how do you address a situation like that? How do you encourage, how do you enable, the leadership team or the management team to embrace these financials?
Yeah, it's not as easy as offering food and everyone returns to the office.
No.
For
No.
um, so yeah, no, it's a good question, and I think a lot of this is like some of this is personality driven. Like some folks are more attuned to want to know the like whether they're on budget or how they're performing and stuff like this. Others are not, and so if it's the folks who are not that we're talking about, then it's like how do you get them into the information
Yes.
to help inform them and then help them start to make their decisions based on what they know to be kind of performance. I think for me, there has to be accountability, and then the question is like, well, how do you create that? Um, like, is it simple thing? Like, is it in their job description to want to care about about the financial performance of their function? As an exercise, it would be interesting to kind of go look at job descriptions to understand if that's actually in there, and is it explicitly stated, or is it sort of implicitly implied in some other bullet point of the job description that could be interpreted one way or the other? Is it part of their performance review? Like, how do you start to create some of that accountability? Are there regularly scheduled meetings between somebody in finance and someone in programs or any other department who manages a budget to review it, to know the story that it's telling, to be able to answer questions from someone other than someone in finance, whether it's the CEO, a donor, a grantor, an investor, whomever you're reporting to, the board. Do you have enough information as a user and are people asking the questions to then force you to know the answer? So
Right.
like accountability is one. I think like finance, I need to be able to provide the information in a way that's easily digestible and available to folks and help coach um, folks as especially for the sort of non-financial folks in the room, coach them how to understand the numbers. What does it mean for them? Like, how can you maybe course correct if there's and the link between kind of programmatic objectives and financial objectives on the other side. So just creating the space for that, I think the prioritizing it as an organization, and that often means time and resource. So for me in finance, I need enough, or someone on my team needs enough space and time on their calendar to engage a number of other executives either once a month or once a quarter or whatever the time frame is to be able to walk through and review, maybe coach, maybe educate, depending on who the person across the screen or the table is, but be available for folks who are supposed to be the users of the information. So, but yeah, it's I think, and that's often a journey as well. Like, how do you, as an organization, if it's not cultural for you or it's not embedded into the your DNA, like how do you start to walk down that road and start to create mechanisms to provide that?
Right. And I mentioned that technology is just an enabler. I mentioned that it's I think it's important to really understand your who you're supporting, who you're serving, and what their needs are, and how best to get that information. Meaning that, you know, yeah, I've always talked about how great, the dashboard functionality is in Sage Intacct, but if your folks are, you know, if it's easier for them to just get an email, right, and get their financials that way, that might be the way to go, you know?
Yeah, like what workflows are they used to, and how can you
Exactly.
seamlessly fit into that so they're not feeling like it's like they're signing in like some of these nuancy kind of small things are can be the reason why folks aren't doing it. Like, is it that they don't want to log into another platform? Like, would they just rather have an email? Is it that the information is at a level that's not meaningful for them? Have you gone through the exercise of determining their needs and building reports that are applicable to them, and it's not may not just be a standard budget versus actuals report that they actually would find valuable? So I think like that, and then like, is it visual, or do folks do they want visualization, or do they want hard numbers? Different people will have different preferences. So I think
Exactly.
being flexible, which may be a challenge for some folks in a finance function. It doesn't often go along with our personalities, but like being flexible enough to listen to what other users may want and need and build towards it, go a long ways.
Right. So I wanted to make sure we get to our next polling question is, what is your organization's biggest concern when it comes to adopting ERP tools? Cost, budget constraints, that's always an important factor. Staff readiness and change management, it's the team ready to embrace a new technology. Data security and compliance, integration with existing systems. Um, and then uncertainty about real world value. What am I really getting from this new technology? So let's see. We'll wait a second or so just to see what the results are. Cost and budget. Yeah, I mean, it is very important. You want to make sure, and I've always said that when you're evaluating solutions, there's three things to look at: making sure the system does what you need it to do in terms of functionality. You want to make sure you've got the right driver, so who's going to help you implement the solution. So it's got to be someone that knows your industry, knows who you are, and if you have prior experience working with them, that's even better. It reduces the risk. And then the third is that this thing can't cost $1 million, because if it does, you can't afford it, right? It's out of your budget. So yeah, that's
No, and I think even the like, given where we are these days with a lot of sort of volatility and uncertainty, especially for
yes.
nonprofits, that one I think not surprisingly comes to the raises to the top. And I think like obviously for us it's similar sort of calculus. Like I think the other response was integrations with other systems. Um, yeah, and I think that like we went through similar analysis, but I think for us it was really on the integration side. We can talk cost late like after, but on the integration side, we wanted to make sure, and I wanted to make sure that our had we knew what our core GL ERP system was, and then we could start talking about some of these third-party solutions, because like I
Yeah.
wanted to know what the integration capabilities of our core system was, and then how that lined up with is that and kind of the data architecture that we were envisioning, because those two things often go hand in hand. Like, will a system handle this dimension or that dimension of data, and how important is that, and what do we save another dimension for later if we want another level of analysis down the road. But then that also plays into cost, whereas like the more dimensions you start layering in,
Yeah.
oftentimes there might be cost implications there. Um, but I think also like thinking about like what does this system need to look for me, like look for us right now? And if we're on a growth trajectory, like how can we grow into that? If we're kind of on a kind of flat trajectory, like we might need to live with that reality. And then the question is like, well, on a how do we like staff ourselves in such a way where we've got some of the skill, maybe even to build out some of the functionality internally over time, or um, some of those type of calculus. So it's not just system, but how do you like wrap the skills, the right skill set around the table to then be able to not only just function in the new system you have, but think about like building it. Like, what are the core reports I need now, and what's it going to cost for me to build those? And then what are some of those other value add things that I can layer on top over time, where when budget allows, but knowing what you're walking into and knowing what you're going to get at the end of the day. Um, so if I think back to my experience at Wakeif, like we rolled out a like fairly robust Sage Intacct implementation with dynamic allocations, which then turned a manual allocation process into a click of a button and some kind of ongoing configuration kind of maintenance. But then we also kind of over time we're like, well, I really wish I had this, or I really wish I had that. So you could like obviously pricing these things out as you go and kind of adding some of that value as you go. And it doesn't all have to be on day one. And I wouldn't recommend that even if you had the money to do it. Um, bite size, like bite off what you can chew. To
Exactly.
put that analogy out there.
But you have a lot of things that you wanted to change. How did you know to start with Sage? Like like you could have, it could have started with AP automation or, maybe budgeting.
Yeah,
Like
and,
how
and
did you
and there was a
determine where to
push. There was
start?
actually a push. I think like early when I stepped in, like when I joined the organization, like we were on the cusp, or we had been awarded a $2 billion grant from the EPA, and there was a lot of focus on compliance and other elements specifically related to the grant. And one of those was procurement and looking at like a P2P system. And I was very adamant on not running down that road, even though like obviously there's like value there in a system in and of itself, but I wanted that core system in place first. I didn't want to have to implement something to in a short term to help my life, like help everyone's lives be easier, whether that's AP automation or expense management or what have you, to get away from manual process. Because I knew as soon as I came back to my core system, I run the risk of having to re-implement another solution. I was like,
I see.
I'm not doing that. I'm not going through that
Mm-hmm.
twice. We'll go through it once. I'm not going to unnecessarily go through it again if I know I can sequence these things in the right way. So it was core
Mm-hmm.
system first, and then kind of the third party add-ons later.
Okay. Um, I want to transition a little bit on to strategies and execution. Looking back, what would you say were the most important thing you did early in the process that helped ensure a smooth implementation?
Yeah, it's a good question. I think like I just mentioned one, and that's sequencing, like
Uh-huh.
picking the right solution first, and making sure that you're not sort of putting the cart in front of the horse, so to speak,
Yes. Yes.
because everything else feeds off that. Understanding what our data dimensions were going to be, and then I was able to do that by having a current staff of mine plug into our SVP of finance role in an interim basis, and he's a systems expert, and so he was able to learn all of the process, all of the workflows, all of the data that you just wouldn't necessarily get that rich of an experience from like, let's say a consultant, for example, who
Yeah.
isn't there on the day to day, can evaluate it, but isn't there on the day to day. So I think we were able to gain a lot of insight that then helped over the course of roughly 6 months was, and for him, it was really just as he was doing the day to day, he was then sort of mentally concocting what the system solution would be to change the way that we were doing things. So when it came to implementation, we already knew what our solution was because he
Yeah.
was like a technical expert,
Yeah.
both CPA but also systems expert, and had already gone through the process and all that process work to understand what the core processes were and how we were currently doing them. And so then that enabled us to then be able to communicate, which is kind of a third point I would say is like, or to get the buy-in, it's like, okay, we're going to invest X amount of dollars into this new system. I was able to then identify like 5 or 6 just as like preliminary examples of here's a core process, um, salary and fringe allocation, indirect allocations. This is what it takes now, and I'm going to put a dollar amount because I know the person who actually has to do that task. I can put a dollar amount to that, and here's what it's going to be. It's going to be literally a click of a button,
Mm.
and we can start to equate and quantify what the savings are going to be. So I know that if volume of transactions increases, or the volume of grants, or the volume of like different revenue streams, okay, so what does I don't really care about volume at this point because I know that my system can handle the volume. And then I can also communicate to like executive leadership, et cetera, of like, hey, like we're going to be paying X amount in license fees every year for X number of users. And I know I'm going to save X amount just in these 5 things. This isn't speaking about the other 35 that I have on the laundry list that we're going to get to, but just for these like top 5 of like report creation, monthly report creation, eliminate the manual process, click a button, get my reports, um, allocations, and you go down the list there's a number of these. So it helped in the sort of internal sales pitch, if you would, to of why it was important and why we should be doing this and what value add it's going to provide, and then you can obviously get into all the other pros and cons of why you would make a decision. But it helps, I think, having some of that embedded talent
Mm.
in the like the system talent in the team to then kind of understand a lot of what we were going to work through. So when it came to implementation, it was a very short implementation timeline. It was kind of, I'd say, well informed in the sense of being able to kind of show staff like what here's like knowing exactly what the system is and really walk you through what like task A is going to look like this now, and it's going to look like this later. Like, and this is the change, so folks could start to sink their teeth into like what my future reality was going to look like, and that I think helped in some of that change management work.
I want to get back to this, but I wanted to make sure we move on to our next polling questions because we have 4 of them. So, which potential benefit would have the greatest impact on your nonprofit automation manual process to save time, improving visibility and reporting, enabling better forecasting and decision making, reducing error and ensuring compliance, freeing up staff capacity for mission-driven work, or all of the above? So Kevin, I think that what you did was, let's see what the results are. All of the above was
There you
50%.
go. Clear,
Yeah,
clear winner.
exactly. But you actually started the implementation not in the system, but you started the implementation sort of understanding your needs, understanding where you are and what your needs are and where you would go, and using that to help you sell within the organization, like, communicate to your internal team about what the possibilities could look like, and I think that's very good because it really does, because you have to do that anyway. You need to have that, what's my current state, what's my future state. you know, and you have an individual on your team that is not just a CPA, but he had a really strong background on systems as well, which is, someone with that caliber is not easy to come across. So,
No,
which
it's
is
not was
great.
not what I would expect. Probably with many folks on the call is having a dynamic skill set like that. So, but even like thinking back to
Yes,
the Wake, my experience at Wakeif, like we had to find that skill set, and this is
yes,
obviously where you came on the scene to help us think through some of that.
yes.
Um, so so yeah, but I think like the polling results speak for themselves. It's like I don't have anything else to say there other than I concur with everything that's there. Like it's the same thing for us. It was all of the above. Like
Yeah.
there's like some of the capabilities of a Sage Intacct system to like some of the new AI capabilities to recognize discrepancies like within journal entries and stuff like this. Like I think for us changing our data architecture, and that was a big one that I haven't really said too much about, but like we really changed the way our data architecture was built in the within the implementation process, and then obviously migrated data over accordingly. Um, but that in and of itself was a huge shift, which some of these capabilities within like system capabilities will help on the kind of data quality side,
Mhm.
both like within kind of automated approval workflows, but also kind of this AI enabled kind of outlier detection and stuff like this, which can only kind of tighten the grip on the quality side of the data. Because I think without that and living in manual process, it's like that's a risk. And I think there's
Right.
more time and energy spent reviewing data, getting the data right, than being able to kind of filter it through an automated approval workflow and have multiple eyes on it before it even hits your GL. So
It's great. So we're actually close to the last question I have, which is um, it's a takeaway. Any final thoughts or words of encouragement for those who are just beginning to evaluate new financial technology or going through their own transformation? So what kind of advice or, would you give someone that's
yeah,
going through this journey?
yeah, and I think we've touched on some of this stuff over the last number of minutes,
Yes.
but it's like for me, understanding the why, like why we're not just implementing this stuff for the sake of implementing it or to spend money or to kind of check off a box that we've kind of done a system conversion. Like understanding the why, like why are we, what's the strategic thinking behind a transformation? And I articulated some of that earlier for us, of like what drove us to kind of think through that and then kind of move forward. I think the other thing in my experience is that systems are the first thing that gets thrown under the bus when something does not go well. It's never a user issue. It's always the system. And I think especially with a system like Sage Intacct that is so powerful, um, it would be a tragedy to see a system like that get thrown under the bus because of either a poor implementation or lack of thought going into the decision or a lack of buy-in around it, or like there's all so many different factors why I've seen systems get thrown under the bus, but more times than not it's a configuration issue or it's a user issue or these types of things. um, so I think like ensuring the buy-in exists. And I think like to the point earlier, it's like stage this stuff out. Don't try to achieve the pinnacle of system implementation success on day zero or day one.
Yeah.
Like stage it out. What's realistic? It doesn't need to be cost that's forcing you to stage it out. Like stage it out based on organizational dynamics, change dynamics, capacity of teams, like the number of different factors that should inform, in my opinion, like how we're staging these implementations out. Like we have limited resources, whether it be time, money, or anything else. So we have to be like be be thoughtful about how you implement. So I think
Yeah.
ultimately you'll end up having greater buy-in by doing that, and you'll be able to implement it in the right way by being
Yeah, we
thoughtful about it.
actually have a little picture where it's like you crawl and then walk and then run, you know? And so it's a
And then
gradual
fly
thing and then fly. Exactly.
if you can grow wings. Uh,
Exactly. So yeah, so thank you for that. And you're right. I've been doing this a long time as well, and you're right. I do see systems being thrown away because, we just feel like it's not doing what we need it to do. And there are usually other factors at play
and
here.
those scars remain for a very long time in organizations. Like it builds the skepticism around like a digital transformation. It doesn't build confidence. The likelihood of getting resources allocated to stuff like this is lower. And it's like there are kind of like trickle down effects of a bad implementation.
Yeah.
Um, and it's like being thoughtful about it, staging it out, both with resources and time and energy and everything else, can help lower, I think, some of the risk of spending too much on an implementation that ends up failing or what have you, making sure that
Yeah.
you're successful.
Yeah, yeah, and a successful implementation requires both team to work together well. It really is a partnership for both the nonprofit as well as the consulting firm that's helping, with the implementation. So well, that's great. We do have one last questions, which we will not look at, we don't need to take a look at result, but we need to um send out four polling questions. I'm going to move forward to this. Um, so we're always looking for ideas. As we only support nonprofits, and so if you have any ideas, any speaking topics that you are would like us to present or are interested in and would like to share with us, please let us know. Send us your feedback, your suggestions to this email address that we're providing here. And additionally, I think Kevin, you asked earlier, how many of these presentations do we do? We are very active. And I mentioned that this month, I mean, this is an interesting month. We usually are not as active. We have four webinars this month, this being the first, and then we have three other ones later. Actually, no, we have a total of four, three webinars and one in-person seminar. So the strategic growth and financial stability, it is an in-person seminars in DC. It's right around DuPont Circle. And it's on the 18th. It is a an in-person, it features a panel of industry experts and non-financial executives sharing strategic strategies and practical tools for strengthening financial resilience. And then the next three here, you see two of which is in September, are their webinars. And we love talking about accounting. I am a CPA myself. This is, an area that I'm very passionate about, and I engage folks like you, Kevin, and other leaders in the nonprofit sectors to talk about accounting, how can we enable better improve, operation wise, and how does technology come and help, nonprofits with their back office accounting operations. So um, we would love to hear your ideas. So we're actually at the end of our presentation. So first of all, I wanted to thank Kevin for your time and contribution and your support. And, I thought this was a great presentation, very relevant for a lot of folks that are evaluating technology and, transitioning to, new ERP systems. So Kevin, thank you so much for that.
No, happy to join. Thanks for the invite.
Yes. So if anyone has any questions for us, feel free to send them our way, and we will get the response back to you. So, well, thank you so much, everyone, for joining. Thank you, Kevin. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, Billion. Appreciate it.
Thank you.